Welcome to the Creator Spotlight here on the Spotlight on Fightful. I am Steven Jensen, joined as always by Jeremy Lambert, and our guest today is returning. He is one half of the new Game Changer Wrestling Tag Team Champions. He is Dominic Garrini of Violence is Forever. Dom, welcome back to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Steven and Jeremy.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, we very much appreciate this. And I'll just go right into it. I was there live at Center Stage to watch your victory at GCW C&O. We tried to get Kevin on tonight as well. We will hopefully catch up with him soon on the show too. Obviously, I'm a longtime fan of you guys. It was awesome being there live at the show. What was it like being in that match, in the reaction and the reception? Because you guys are hated in that GCW universe, but I mean, you have a lot of people in the Atlanta, Georgia area that were there supporting you for that win.
Yeah. So that was like the big thing too. It is so interesting to win it, to have probably one of our top 3 victories, as a team, in a spot where we have a lot of history. Obviously, we spent a lot of time cutting our teeth, doing a lot of work for Action Wrestling and Matt Griffin down in the Atlanta, Tyrone, Georgia area. Obviously, a short 4-hour jaunt from the home of Sup, where, Kevin built an entire company, so, and a lot of people for the longest time, misplaced me as like a Southern guy. Just because of Kevin and the work I did in the South for so long. But I mean, I'm a Midwest guy at best. I'm a mutt, really. Us Ohio kids are mutts. Like, we really don't have, we're in the middle of the South, the Midwest, and the East. So it's like, I'll just take whoever wants to claim me. But it was great. In that universe, our entire kind of setup in the GCW universe has been to be dickhead heels. Because if you look at their teams that they've had for the last, year, it's kind of all baby faces for the most part. Macisos, Bussy, East West Express, they did a lot of stuff. SGC, those are all babyface teams. So they really didn't have a strong heel presence. And that was something that I brought up. And I don't know, I probably didn't bring this up the last time when I was on. But back earlier this year, I had a sit down with Dave Prazak. We were backstage together and we were just talking about stuff. And we had both kind of come to that conclusion. I was like, this needs to happen at some point. We didn't know when. And, Detroit was just kind of like the jumping off point. And, we were able to win that night. And that kind of really established us in the GCW sphere. Because I've had this talk with John Thorne, AIW promoter, quite a bit. The GCW fan base isn't exactly representative of the independent wrestling fan base. There are a lot of GCW fans that they're just GCW fans. They don't follow anything and everything, or they just kind of follow what they have. So, a lot of the last 3 years we did outside of GCW wasn't necessarily seen. So, a lot of what we had to do was introduce ourselves to those fans. And I think, we were given the opportunity with, a Macios match off the rip, Bussy right after, to take on 2 of the top tag teams and kind of go on from there. So, to go into that match in Atlanta and Center Stage, which is, as I said on Twitter that day, a venue steeped in wrestling tradition, probably one of the only venues in the country to host both Ric Flair and Jimmy Lloyd. But, to win them there was big, and just to do it, because if you look at the accomplishments that Kevin and I have had, since we became a tag team in 2018, this was really like one of the last ones prior to, signing a major contract somewhere. So, this was like the white whale per se. So, we're going to ride it out for what it was. And it was interesting because everything we had done in GCW was kind of squeaky clean. We'd done some doors the first Macios match. So it was a match where he felt like maybe it was, we had to bleed a little bit to maybe get ingrained into that culture. And I think that was a big thing. And I think that by the end of the match, while we were the heels, everybody's singing Zombie at the end. So
yeah,
it's a very desired result, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I mean, and by a little bit of blood, you mean a lot of blood, by the way. You guys did bleed.
I'm going to tell you one thing. I had a discussion with one of my friends, Dustin, last night about this at training. The Cleveland crew of wrestlers, we are just a good set of bleeders, okay? Myself, Eric Dillinger, Josh Bishop, just if we're going to do anything, we are on the razor, okay? We know that red equals green.
Yes, very fair, very fair. And you mentioned, at the end of the match, the crowd was singing Zombie. I've rewatched it many times, actually. I actually have the show replaying to the side here, too, as we do this interview. And I love the it's really cool. I don't know if you've gone back and watched it, but they do a picture in picture as you guys are celebrating, and it shows you guys the finish with you guys hitting like the chasing the dragon through the glass with the chain and everything, which looks great because the way the camera is set up, it looks like Kevin kills him with that thing. It flies off his leg, and then you go through the glass. And then in simultaneously, you can see you on the turnbuckle singing Zombie with the crowd, and you just look super, super hyped. And like, I can actually catch myself in the crowd. Like I'm super hyped as well. So like, man, it was a great moment. And it was one of those things, like you mentioned, y'all are heels on the show, but like, that was a very, very, you've won the crowd, massively.
I look at like the entrance like this. Obviously, a big proponent of our success is the fact that we've created this crazy, awesome entrance that people love to be interactive with, even as heels. And I look at it like this, Kevin and I will always talk about our comfort wrestling, our era of wrestling we like is 05 to 08 Ring of Honor. Well, Bryan Danielson was one of the top guys, even when he was a babyface or a heel. And it didn't matter whether he was a good guy or a bad guy. He got up on the ropes and he did the final countdown every time, and the crowd loved it. And that's that 3/4 of that is what wrestling is. It's about crowd interaction. If they love you and they hate you, because they can love you for that second of that entrance and that sing along, but then you kick somebody in the face and they're like, "Oh, what a dickhead."
Yes. I do have a few follow-ups, but Jeremy, do you have any questions before I get to more follow-ups?
I did have a follow-up on the sit down with Dave Prazak. You mentioned you were talking to him. Were you talking to him about like working heel in GCW?
Just working GCW in general.
Okay.
So actually, I can tie this all back to Fightful. Funny enough, this was the night that Sean did the spot with Shaza that is so polarizing all of a sudden. That they all give a shit about for some reason. We had wrestled, and then I had rode with Josh Bishop. Him and I had driven together, and he was in the main event against Gangrel, so I had to wait for him. So the match had ended, and Josh is notoriously just takes forever to get done guy. Just like doing whatever, meandering. So me and Prazak sat down, we started talking, and we just got into like talking about everything, because like Dave and I had some health issues recently at the same time, because Dave had been brought into MLW to be a producer, and that same episode set that he was brought in I was also out with my injury. So we just kind of bonded over some injury stuff. And, Dave and Lenny are the voice of my wrestling fandom for the most part. So then we just got talking about GCW, and I had said, I feel like we would do really well there. I feel like the tag division hasn't had a lot of turnover, especially since the Briscoes are gone. And he's like, I agree. And he's just like, and we just kind of got into it. And I said, I feel like we could be a very missing piece for the division. He's like, he agreed with me, and we kind of talked shop about it. And as the Hulkster would say, we talked turkey, brother. And it was a few months after that, but it just everything about timing. And that's why I try to tell all the AIW wrestling kids that I train and I bring up, you're on the top of the world. Everything's about timing. There's got to be a time and a place, and there's got to be the time to bring in. And whether it be, that GCW had associated us so much with being such allies of IW TV, etc., and then we had our time off after we lost the belts, or what, it just timing was perfect. And I think, if you listen to Dave's call of our win, there's a lot of passion in there for it, because I think he, was a big proponent of us coming in and doing stuff and coming in and being that heel team.
And then also for kind of the heel work stuff, like, do you have a preference of working babyface and heel and changing your style when it comes to whichever side you're working?
We're lucky. So Kevin and I are lucky. For some reason, it doesn't really matter whether we're babies or heels. We kind of wrestle the same no matter what. We turn up the aggression probably a little bit more when we're heels, and we kind of sell more when we're baby faces. But I would say a lot of our stuff is the exact same. And kind of that aggression that we put when we're heels, we use that as our kind of fight backs and our fire when we're baby faces. So for us, it doesn't really matter. I think if you ask any wrestler, most of them are going to say it's easier to be a heel because there's less pandering to the crowd. There's less having to get somebody on your side. It's way easier to just kick a dude in the face, look at the crowd with a goofy face, and make them boo you.
All right, go ahead, Jensen.
Oh, sorry. I have one follow-up actually based on something you mentioned just a second ago. You were talking about Sean Ross Sapp and, all this talk about him versus Shaza McKenzie. Sean actually did a run-in on our show last week while we were live, talked a little bit about how you and Q were actually talking about maybe doing some sort of like training vignettes with him. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah. So when Sean had done everything, and that night I talked to Sean off and on about a lot because him and I have a lot of similarities with the jiu-jitsu, the catch wrestling stuff. So we talked off and on about a lot of stuff. And I was supposed to wrestle Billy Scott, who he had actually trained with in a UWF rules match, right when my injury had happened, and that got canceled. So we had talked a lot about that and stuff. So when he was backstage to do the spot of BLP, him and I were talking, and then he did the Impaler, and it looked awesome, better than like 3/4 of the dudes who do DDTs on the Indies currently. And I was just like, if you need anything, to get ready for this, just let me know. So we had talked remotely recently, and I had said, how funny, and he'd asked me if we would do some stuff, and I said, how funny would it be if we did like the Jeff Jarrett MMA thing, where like I had you come in to do pro wrestling with us, and like you were just beating up like little kids. And like we were doing something like that, and then it kind of went from there. So like I have no problem. Pro wrestling is built off of the carnival aspect of it. It's built off of taking somebody like Sean and putting them in there to see them get their ass whooped. What's one of the most famous feuds in wrestling history? Andy Kaufman versus Jim Walton.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Andy Kaufman's not a trained wrestler, but it's what it is. Like. And I believe me, I'm not by any means putting Andy Kaufman and Sean in the same breath,
Oh, he's gonna take that run with that.
Sure. But in the spectrum of like wrestling's about attractions, and that's what makes it different. Like 80s WWF is about attractions. The Attitude Era is about attractions. Like even in Japan, when you're doing the craziest stuff in the world, you still have Minoru Suzuki doing these crazy fun attraction matches, and that's like. Sometimes wrestlers especially try to take this stuff way too seriously. It's supposed to be fun, it's an entertainment art form as well as a sport art form, and there's supposed to be like that fun element to it.
Yeah.
The point about Suzuki is honestly fantastic because you look at him and he's one of the most legit, we'll say, I don't know why I use quotes, but like one of the legit wrestlers in the world. And it's like, oh, remember when Suzuki wrestled like a teenager, like a child? Like, remember when this happened? It's like people just want to ignore that kind of stuff.
I remember when he got announced to wrestle May Segura earlier just a little bit ago. I saw somebody on my Facebook tweet about how they're never a fan of Suzuki anymore because, he's a serious wrestler. He shouldn't be doing stuff. He shouldn't be wrestling a female that he looks like he could crush. And it's like, and my one friend Dustin, who was referencing, he put like 6 YouTube clips up of like him versus a teenager, him doing like these comedy matches and Hustle, and he's like, should have been a fan of him from the start then, And that's the beauty of it. Like that's part of the other thing about wrestling is like not taking yourself too seriously. Like the best wrestlers are the wrestlers who are willing to for lack of a better term, show ass. Like you can't just be. I'm going to beat the shit out of this guy every fucking match. You got to look like an asshole. Like, go look like a dumbass sometimes. That's the importance of it.
Also, to the point of Suzuki, Kenny Omega, widely regarded as one of the best ever. Hey, he wrestled a blow-up doll. And, he got some flack for that. But now people are just like, oh, yeah, Omega wrestled a blow-up doll. Like, and everyone and people still consider him the best ever. People who are probably mad at Sean are probably huge Kenny Omega fans.
Yeah, it's what it is. It's just it's internet culture of like we're mad at something today and we're gonna galvanize against it.
Yes. Now I did want to ask you about another Sean. I caught at the end of the match after you guys won the tag team titles. You got a camera up to you and you said, "Rest in peace, Sean." You dedicated the match. Can you speak on that a little bit?
It was actually John.
John. I'm sorry, John.
John.
Okay.
So I came up in AIW, Cleveland Wrestling. There's one fixture. If you guys have ever watched those old Johnny Gargano docs that Kenny Johnson did, they touch on a young man named Caden.
Yes, I remember those. Those are great documentaries. Absolutely.
Well, in that, you would see Caden's grandpa always brought him to the shows. Caden's grandpa was a fixture at every single AIW show. He would come to every show. Caden's grandpa's name is John, and John passed away just a couple of days before the show. John was always a guy who would ask you how you were doing, would make sure everything in your life was okay, and then he would ask, "What's next?" And that was always his big thing. He'd say, "What's next for you, Dom?" And I would say, just going to ride it until it doesn't ride no more, John, and stuff like that. So Thursday, when I flew to Chicago to meet with Kevin, Caden had let people know that his grandfather had passed away, and it was very sudden. We had just seen him at Absolution back in July, so he had a rapid health decline, very sad. So I had texted Caden Friday night, and I said, hey, please, stay strong, keep your head up. And then I said, if we win tomorrow night, because I didn't know, I said, just stay tuned to the camera. And it was important for me to find that camera, grab that camera, and do that because, John supported everything that any of the AIW kids have done, whether it be me, whether it be Josh Bishop, Britt Baker when she was coming out. John cared about every one of those kids. So it was important for me to, even in the smallest way, A, give him the shout out, and B, give Caden, who is probably going through it right now, something to, just brighten his day up.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, rest in peace to John. Hey, I heard Sean on the broadcast, so I apologize for that.
Oh, no, you're fine.
And Caden, you're referring to like KVR 216 on Twitter.
Yep.
Always GIF and wrestling. So
they have a GoFundMe right now for funeral costs when somebody passes away unexpectedly. America, great country that it costs a lot of money to die. So if anybody can help the family out, there's a GoFundMe up for that. I think they're like a little over halfway there.
Okay.
We'll make sure that link is below in this description as well for the videos. So if you're listening to this right now, you can click the link below and go donate to the GoFundMe. Caden, I've never met Caden or his grandfather, but all the gifts that they do for wrestling is very big, and that's gonna lead me to another question, but I'll get to that. I guess I can ask it now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there was this debate online of bringing phones to wrestling events. I don't know if you saw this, but
that one I did get in on.
Okay, I saw a little bit of it.
That was a lot more of the group chat messages that went on that one for me.
Oh, okay. All right. We're actually scheduled to have Ricky Shane Page on another show that I do tomorrow, and I'm going to bring this up with him. But I do want to get your thoughts on it. So for those that don't know, it was a thing Beyond Wrestling put out there of like, hey, you guys go to a comedy show, if you lock your phones. What are your thoughts about this if we did this at a wrestling event? And I feel like for the most part, it was, this doesn't seem like a very good idea. And then some people were kind of like, let's give it a shot type of thing. But where do you stand on this, Dom?
I more stand with the idea of let people have their phones. I think that based on especially the infrastructure that I've seen within independent wrestling, I would not try. I will also say this in the AIW experience. The people who help at our shows are our students. Not the brightest bunch and not the brightest bulbs in the pack sometimes. I would never trust them to get 300 phones on the front end and put them away, get them all back to every time manner, as well as find those phones in case there was an emergency to give them to somebody. So there are the safety concerns are there for sure. The other big thing too, as to why I wouldn't like it myself, is so much of going to an independent wrestling show is that experience of meeting people, taking pictures with them. I would say a solid 60 to 70% of my merch sales now are done digitally based on getting that scan in and like either Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, that stuff. So it's big for that in regards to that as well. That COVID changed a lot of that. Like people, that's the first thing people ask, do you guys take, digital payment, excuse me. So there's that. And I think part of it too is like, we want fans to be able to interact, especially live to the show and be able to see. Now, I do get where Ricky and Drew are coming from with what they want. They want it to feel like it's special to be in that live crowd. They feel like that's going to help push live stuff. I also know where Ricky's head is at on it too, because he runs RPW up here, or RCW up here, and that's one of his rules is no gifts to the show, no video of the show. And for him, in his mind, it's in the way he believes is it allows young wrestlers to not get scrutinized for something they might mess up on, etc. And it's not a bad, thought process at all. In my opinion, I think fan interaction, even if they are, for lack of a better term, shitting on you, will help you grow because you need to hear the good and the bad. You can't be gassed up as to how good you are, or hey, you're improving, at this rate. You need to be able to see that you suck sometimes. Because I will tell you, when I started, not everybody was a Dominic Garrini fan. I would read a lot of tweets about how I fucking sucked. Or, man, this guy doesn't wear shoes. What a fucking weirdo. Or this guy's gear sucks. Like I'd read a million things. But I would use, that critique and kind of go from there on it. I used to have, this would show you how my mind works. I did an AAW pre-show back maybe when I was 5 matches into my career, and a guy just relentlessly shit on me about how bad my gear was and how I wasn't good. And that was 2016, so that would have been July or August 2016. It was in Chicago. So then I wrestled again in Chicago in April of 2017. And this guy, the same guy, I don't think he realized I was the guy in the pre-show talking about how good I was and how amazing I was, and bought a shirt for me. And I had that tweet saved for some reason or bookmarked, and I showed it to him. And I was like, a lot changes in 7 months. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And that's part of the beauty of it, is I took this guy who hated me and thought I sucked, and 6 months later, he's giving me money and he's supporting me. He's telling, the company these companies to bring me back out. So I think that's so important. And let's be real. Independent wrestling is based off of fan dollars. So if we piss our fans off and tell them, hey, let's put the phones away, you guys can't have your phones, etc., then maybe they don't come to the show. And then you're hoping that show that you now film to go on IWTV, Fight TV, whatever it is, you're hoping that the fan watches that in the long run. And the question is, do we want to play to the 150 to 200 in attendance, or do we want to play to the possible, thousands that might watch outwardly in the other realm? I think that there's merits to both ends of it. I really do. I don't think that, anything's wrong with the idea of wanting to do it like a comedy show. But I think that there's fundamental differences between the comedy show aspect and this. While there's always new moves we want to try that we might mess up, in the comedy realm, usually those artists are under some sort of contract that they have to try out new bits at X show to see if it will then go on their Netflix special, back in the day DVDs. I'm going to age myself, but those things, we don't have that. A lot of it would be trial and error for us to then say, okay, did this move work? Did that sequence work? Okay, well, we're going to do, big show next week. Let's do it on that. So there's stuff like that. And I get the sentiment that not everybody has a ring to train in and to like have practice and say, let's try these things out here. But I think that so much of independent wrestling is the lifeblood of fan interaction, fans getting to do that stuff, fans getting to take pictures with us, fans getting to buy merchandise, fans getting to film a little bit of the show and interact. I always remember this from my jiu-jitsu days, and I bring this up to a lot of our students, and I say, what's the difference between going to a Browns game or, the WWE and coming to us, coming to an AIW show? And get a lot of meandering. And I say, the difference is at intermission, you guys are out at a merchandise table, and that little kid that just saw you can come up and take a picture and shake your hand and talk to you. And you're going to be, a positive influence on if that kid likes wrestling, if that kid wants to become a wrestler, etc. Whereas like if I go to the Browns game, I'm not going to go and be able to hang out with David and Njoku at halftime. That guy is doing whatever. I'm not going to see him after the game. Maybe he'll dap me up after the game and I'll remember that. But, we have such a unique experience to create and forge bonds and memories. And I don't know if taking the phone away so that, we have no pictures of the show is that big of a deal to me. I guess that's where my head's at on it.
Yeah, I see both sides of it for sure.
Yeah, there's merits. There's 100% merits to both sides. Like straight up, for a while, I remember Thorne didn't want us to stream on Fight or on IWTV back in the day because when we did Akron, we were like, hey, these are shows that you have to come to. So, we want to push ticket sales. And for if you're a live event based company, I see some merit into not streaming things like that. But it all just matters, it matters. First of all, one of the big things is it matters what your end game is as a company. I think that for Ricky and RCW, a lot of, his idea there is taking young wrestlers, giving them an outlet and giving them a chance to, do it where it's not seen under the big media eye, except if somebody's paying for it, which is a great idea. And he'll be successful if he wants it to be. So it all matters.
Well, I look forward to talking to Ricky about that, and you bring up the points about and RCW and everything. Free advice for some promotions, and maybe I'm off base here, but like when I do like results and stuff for shows, most of the like clips, media and stuff are from like fans and everything. I would like promotions, like if you want to put your product out there a little bit more, like put your own media out there in that, because these wrestlers, a lot of wrestlers, like this is how they sometimes get discovered. It's like, oh, I saw this GIF, I saw that clip, I saw that clip, I saw this picture. And a lot of promotions don't do that.
And that's bring it back to Caden. Caden gifts something and people see it. Like he gifted, this was a couple years, this is 2018, I want to say. I wrestled in this main event versus Tom Lawler. It was like a tag match, and I gave him this German suplex, and we had this old vinyl canvas on the ring, and he slid the entire length of the ring, and it was like the wildest gift. Or like, there's another EIW gift that's famous of like Janela just throwing a chair behind him, and out of nowhere it lands perfectly in the ring. So like that, there's merits to it. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it matters on all different levels. I think Beyond Wrestling at where it's at would have a very difficult like idea of taking the phones away. But Drew has run shows where they don't stream live and you don't really know the results until they put it on IWTV, which is great. I'll tell you, in the results realm, Kevin Ford used to message me after every AIW show for results to put up on PW Ponderings, and it never bothered me to go ahead and do that for him. And that's a great thing if promoters are willing to, just all it takes is just sending the results. And if you're a promoter, likely you wrote the card before you got to the building. You can just put a note in your phone and send it to PW Pondering, send it to you guys. It would help them out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, just for what it's worth, anyone who is watching this that does run promotions, I mean, that's very common that someone will hit up myself or Jeremy, and I'll direct them over to Jeremy, and we'll make sure their results are getting out there. And then, like Jeremy said, a lot of the time on the website underneath the results, the media that we're using for that is going to a lot of time be clips that fans took themselves. But once again, I understand, but like, because you could also look at a company like PWG and say like, well, they've run this type of like, exclusive type of thing, and it works for them for so long,
And well, if you look into where Beyond Wrestling started in this, it was Ricky and Drew started it, and they started it in like Elyria, Ohio, to Sandusky, Ohio, and it was closed set studio taping. So a lot of it, I think, is they would love the idea of going back to the way it used to be, which I think you can do. But I think that it can't be curated in the way of like, hey, normal show up, we're taking the phones away. I think it's got to be a very special event. You have to say, we have this event. It's going to be like a closed set taping, essentially, almost like Lucha Underground to a point where you're like, hey, we're selling 100 tickets to this event. You on the front end, you're giving up your phone, and like it's got to be known. I think that doing it in like a large scale wouldn't work, but I think doing it in like a small scale and possibly creating a very raucous crowd would work very well.
Yeah, I mean, a handful of years ago, I attended a few days worth of Dojo Pro tapings.
Oh yeah, I knew right where you're going with that.
Yeah, and we all signed NDAs.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's how Lucha Underground worked. Is they would bring the extras in, they would all sign NDAs, and you didn't see anything. So if the idea is you want to do this idea, I think that there's ways to do it. Like I said, I think you have a lawyer drop NDAs. You say, we have 100 tickets. You're going to sign an NDA. You can't let this out. We're going to put this out weekly episodically or whatever we're going to do, or one big go. And if you want that feeling, and if that works and you're successful on that a couple times, then you can increase the number of tickets, etc. Go from there. Like there's ways to do it. I think that possibly the framing of it wasn't the right way in the tweet, but also it's the internet. People are going to come crazy at everything.
Yeah, true. Now something
whether
else
they love it or they hate it.
True. Now something else I wanted to ask you about that kind of ties into this is, I know that. So like it also kind of ties back to something you mentioned earlier in this interview about how a lot of people thought that you were like a Southeast guy for a long time. Part of that is because of like your work in SUP that we were mentioning before. You were a Southern Underground Pro Bone Storm champion. I knew you as like that guy, the Bone Collector originally, and I knew Kevin Koo at the time. I believe he was like the tri-state champion. He was a singles guy as well. And I know that there was a lot of like negative feedback initially to the idea of like you going into tag team wrestling, like you and Q wouldn't fit well together. This wouldn't work. This is a bad idea. And now look what you guys have accomplished. I'd just like to kind of know your thoughts on, it can maybe just address the haters maybe a little bit on that. I don't know.
Okay, that's good. So it's funny because if you saw my tweet after we won, it was literally, I had multiple people tell me in 2018, what are you doing? Like, you're very successful as a singles. I had just pretty much gotten done with my run in Evolve at that time. And true story, Gabe had told me when I had, kind of gotten killed off from Evolve, he had said, reach out to me in about 2 months. I would like to bring you back as a singles and push you. And I said, okay. I wasn't in an awesome spot in my life at that point, mentally. So I had kind of just, Kevin and I had linked up, and honestly, like I said, I think last time, we just watched a lot of progress. And we watched a lot of ring comp, and it was a lot of the same idea of Tim and Walter don't really fit together as a tag team, but when you put them together, it just works. And that was kind of our thought process, is we could do this. In a lot of our thought process too was there's no real ass kicker tag team on the indies per se. And at that time, the 2018 indie tag scene is not what the current 2023 indie tag scene is. It was pretty bare and pretty barren, and people didn't want to be a tag team. I've talked with people before, and I always say this, like, no one gets into wrestling and says, you know what, I want to main event WrestleMania in a tag team. The idea is I want to be world heavyweight champion, and I want to win the world heavyweight title on WrestleMania alone, be the sole, proprietor of that. And I guess just because I had seen single stuff and I'd done it, I was like, I really don't care whether I get this success by myself or I get to, awesomely share it with the guy who became my best friend. So I then went back to an interview I remember hearing Ethan Page talk about, and I had gotten a lot of time to spend with Ethan Page early in my career because he was an AIW mainstay. I had done a couple of Evolve road trips where I just drove him around. I got to pick his brain a lot, but he had a podcast with Josh Alexander years ago, and they had talked on it about Monster Mafia and, why they did it. And they did it because they both agreed that at the time that was their way to get to PWG. They said we could keep on trying to be singles guys and get there, but there's less tag teams than there are singles, and we're good and we have good chemistry. So it was that way. So that was another idea that Kevin and I had, was that, while we were good as singles, we knew that we could put the chemistry together and become a good tag team. And it just became kind of like a labor of love of figuring everything out. And, as we always talk about, we credit a lot of that first Aussie Open match to a lot. Kyle and Mark were very kind to us and gave us a lot of great advice on the end of it. And just from there, it was just kind of like a proponent of moving on and moving on and moving on and moving on, and just trying to get better every time out. So to the haters that said, why do you want to be a tag team? I guess, as one of the most consistently booked acts on the 2023 indie scene, it worked out pretty well. And that was, I had a talk with Gabe, actually. He was at the Prestige show last year, about a year ago. And he asked me, and he said, what do you credit your guys' run to? And I said, well, that's a good question. He's like, because you guys were both remotely, successful singles guys. And I said, to us, we were willing to kind of eat shit at the start to get ourselves out there. And we took anything and everything we could as a tag team to start. And from there, the idea was, and Gabe asked me specifically, he said, it's really hard, as a tag team to get a lot of traction because you're paying 2 flights or you're paying 2 sets of trans. And I said, well, for us, it's even harder because we lived 8 hours apart at the time, or 6 hours, whatever it was. And he's like, so how'd you do it? I said, well, simple. I said, we would usually be willing to come way down on our rate as long as all of our transportation was covered, because we knew 2 things. We knew we were good enough in the ring that you'd want to bring us back at a higher price later on. And we knew that we were good enough in the ring that the crowd would respond to us and they want to buy our merchandise. And that's an old idea I took from Colt Cabana and the Bucks. The idea is, as long as your transportation is covered and you have good merchandise and you're going to make money on that, the wrestling money is just gravy on the end of that. And that was how we started. And we did a lot of really, really, really rough shows in the South and, the Midwest. And it kind of built from that to where we are now. And that's the thing. A lot of young wrestlers come into the game and they, oh, this isn't worth my time. everything's worth your time, because valuable reps are valuable reps. You know, if what makes you a better wrestler, sitting at home on the weekend doing nothing, or, you know, getting out there and wrestling in front of, you know, podunk nobodies that don't know what wrestling is and getting them into the match. Because the way you wrestle for AIW, SUP, GCW is entirely different than you're going to wrestle for the local indie, you know, at Texarkana. And that's so important. And too many people, I watch too many of my own kids, and I have to criticize them. They'll go out and try to have this AIW style match, and I said, "What'd you learn tonight?" And they'll be like, and I'm like, "You can't have that match everywhere." I was like, "You have to adjust to where you're at." I said, "You can do the Phoenix Splash here, and they're not going to care." I said, "But if you do a Stone Cold Stunner, they're going to lose their mind, because that's what they associate wrestling with. That's what they know. You do that stuff. That's the key." And that's Chandler Biggins line of thought that he taught me when I was young in wrestling. He said, "You learn how to wrestle in wrestling school, but you learn how to work on the road." And that always stayed with me, and that will always stay with me.
Do you have any, just out of curiosity, any like particularly bad like stories or anything from like any of these? Like you said, you and Q had to work like really like random, crazy,
Yes.
like just. Do you have any like just wild stories?
We worked a lot of the arena in Jeffersonville.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay, fair. Yeah, that's enough said.
To the point that the idea of riding to the arena in Jeffersonville with any less than 3 other people in the car to keep me sane, it's not a lot. Like, I love you, Gary and Paradigm, but God, anywhere else.
Okay, fair enough.
But no, I mean, like, we would have like small, like little shows, you know, down in those areas. But, you know, part of that is also what made Kevin and I good, because we would have these drives and we'd be figuring out, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Hey, should we do this tonight? What do you think about this? And that's the other thing too. If you're going to become a tag team, and any of my young tag teams that have come across the IW school, I'm not saying you guys got to be best friends, because some of the best tag teams in the history of wrestling actually hate each other. Like, two cool, known teams hate each other. It helps out a lot if you guys are best friends. Believe me, you're going to be a lot better if you're best friends. But you guys have to have a kind of a one-track mind together that allows you to see eye to eye and come up with these ideas and build and work off of each other. Like, I can tell you right now, there are times where Ku and I are a married couple. We each have an idea that we're very strongly in a belief of, and we will argue and argue and argue to the point where one of us has to leave the room, and then one of us will be like, "Okay, let's settle this and we'll do this." Usually I'm the one, because I'm a little less hard-headed than him, and I have like a really weird conscience. I'm like, you know what, maybe he was right. Like, we got in an argument one night about what gear to wear one weekend. Like,
Really?
I didn't like the way this one pair of gear fit. He liked the idea of wearing this gear, and we argued about it through text. And I was like, you know what? You're right. We'll just wear the gear. Okay. But how
did the gear turn out? Like, once you got to the show, you worked.
The gear was fine. The gear was always fine. It was just, earlier this year, I went from like the board shorts to like actual tight fitting gear. So the original pair of gear that Kevin had made me is board shorts. So I wanted a pair that was like tight. So I didn't want to go, because it was 2 matches in a night. So I didn't want to wear the tight gear first match to then the loose gear second match, because I thought it looked weird. So I just kind of had to like settle. I was like, you know what, you're right. An all-time classic, me and him argument of just stupidity. But overall, yeah, if you can create a meaningful relationship with that partner, and it's not just like, hey, we text once a week. Like, if you text on a daily and you figure things out, you're going to be great. And that's the other big thing, is, like I said, if you want to become a tag team, or if tag team wrestling is your at least pathway to success, make it that way. Don't resent it. Make it that way and say, you know what, let's make the most out of this. Let's build and let's do great.
When we had you on earlier this year, it was before GCW, and it was also before a particular match against the Motor City Machine Guns that happened at DPW. Now that the match has happened, your thoughts on it, and sharing the ring with Shelly and Sabin.
Two of the absolute best professional wrestlers of my era. Not my best performance. I know Kevin did fine, and obviously Alex and Sabin were great. Not my best night. Because true story, that morning, I was on my flight to go to DPW, and we had gotten on the flight, I had seated, and it had been about 15 minutes, and I was like, this is weird. So then next thing I know, they come over the PA and they say, hey, there's a full ground stop. There's a security issue. It's going to be, a slight delay. An hour later, we still haven't taken off. And I'm looking at my layover in Chicago to go to Raleigh-Durham, not a very populated airport per se. And I'm like, oh, this is bad. I was like, this might not happen. So I get up and I asked the flight attendant, I said, hey, if you don't mind me asking, I said, do you happen to have any idea how long this is going to be? I was like, because my connection is in pure danger. And she's just like, we don't really know. And she had me go through and look at it. And she's like, I would call and see if they can get you on a different connection. So I called, and the Southwest people are like, we can't do anything while you're on the plane. And I was like, oh, great. 15 more minutes passes and still nothing. So I asked her, I was like, am I okay to deplane if need be? I was like, figure this out. And she's like, yeah. So they put on, okay, they've opened everything back up. I have an hour between the flight from Cleveland to Chicago and and then I also have to catch the connection. And I'm like, oh, this is tight. So another 5 minutes passes and we have not done anything, nothing, no movement has happened. And they're like, yeah, they're like, the other flight that we pulled people from, they're like, they had to get all their bags to the plane. So it's going to be like 30 more minutes. I said, please let me off the plane. And they let me off, and I went to the desk and they're like, we have no flights to get you to Raleigh-Durham. It's a Sunday. Like, you're screwed. And I said, that's fine. I said, this is an 8-hour drive. I said, I'll do it. It was like 8 a.m. So I texted John Blood, and I said, hey, please don't be alarmed. I said, my flight is fucked. But I said, I'm going to drive. I said, I'll see you guys. I said, I don't know when I'll see you, but I'll see you. So I texted one of my students, Xavier Garcia, and I said, I knew he was a big DPW guy. And I said, hey, are you busy? And he said, no. I said, I just need someone to ride with me. I said, I do not care. I said, I just need someone to ride with me so I don't die. Got in the car, drove 8 hours. So I went 8 hours straight in the car, pretty much got out. Everything was already called for me. And it was, like I said, just not my best performance. If you come out of the car when you're not expecting to come out of the car after 8 hours, everything's off a little bit. But the match itself, people seem to love. The environment was insane. That DPW crowd is just so infectious. And, Alex and Saban were on their game. And I think that, hopefully we get to do some more versus them in DPW down the line.
Okay, can I just give you kudos real quickly for doing? I've had to make this drive a lot this year from Cleveland to Raleigh, essentially. So I know the drive like the back of my hand.
Dude,
making that drive, it's not like difficult or anything. Like it's a pretty straight shot. You go, yeah, it's long, and you go through the mountains.
On 77.
Yeah. So like I know the drive. Getting out of there, like, and then wrestling a match. Just props on that. Your performance might not have been what you wanted to, but like I do that drive and I get to my destination. I'm like, I'm going to bed. I'm done with this day.
It's funny because Zay doesn't have a driver's license, which is like a Cleveland wrestling training thing. None of these kids have driver's licenses. It's insane. It's just absolutely insane. It blows my mind. For 7 years. So if we have 5 new kids at the school, 3 of them don't have a driver's license and they are of driving age and couldn't drive. So the way back is what sucked because I live in Canton. So I live an hour south of Cleveland. So I had to pass my house to drop Xavier off and then drive an hour back that Monday. And I was just like, I'm so miserable.
And you did it Sunday to Monday as well.
Yeah.
So you basically just drove, wrestled, drove back. I slept, I guess.
We had a hotel, so I stayed, and then I got up the next morning. We drove that next day, but it was not fun. And the only other drive that compares to it, and I guess I do it because I just like the environment of the company so much, is C4 is about 7.5 hours from here, and I'm pretty consistent with that. But we kind of created a carload that goes to C4, and it's myself, Isaiah Broner, and Josh Bishop, and we kind of just have like a whole unison group of how we do it. And the only time that drive ever got really hairy was last year around this time. There was a day, and I will always remember the week because there was a terrible snowstorm that hit through Buffalo. And it dropped like 2 feet of snow because the Browns were supposed to play the Bills in Buffalo, and they moved the game to Detroit because of how bad the snow was. And that Friday was the day it all snowed, and we had to go to C4. And I told, Mark the promoter, I said, we'll get there. And he said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I think so. I mean, like Huff couldn't even get out of his driveway to go to the show. So that normal 8-hour drive turned into 12 hours one way is the way it had to reroute me. It had to fully push me around Buffalo. And I had like a Toyota Camry as a rental. And Chase Oliver came with me that day, and Bishop. And we hit about 7 inches of snow in Watertown, New York. And 20 miles per hour, white knuckling through, getting through that snow was insane, to the point where Josh Bishop's dad saw me 2 weeks later and said, I don't know how you did that, man. Like a Toyota Camry through 7-8 inches of snow. That's crazy.
Man. So something else. Did you have any other follow-ups about the drive or anything, Jeremy?
Oh no, I was just gonna say,
All right.
Camry through a bunch of snow. I had, when I first moved here to Ohio, I had a Mustang, which it's at least but very low to the ground and everything. And I moved here. When I moved here, it was a snowstorm like that kind of weekend, and I'm like, yep, I needed to upgrade anyway because kids. But I had a Mustang. I was like, nope, this ain't gonna last very long here in Ohio.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, coming off of kind of talking about a dream match there with Motor City Machine Guns that you got to have. And I don't know if you can even speak to this or not, but I'm just curious. There was FTR, they were doing open challenges recently, and VIF was a team that every week I was coming on the show and I was like, hopefully this week it's VIF. And it's like, I see the Vork Horseman pop up and I'm like, it could very easily also be VIF. Like, where are they at? Were there any conversations at all about that?
No. We did do extra work, I think maybe one time during that period. That period would have been in Cleveland. So I wrestled. For some reason, we were in opposite matches. I don't know. You had both of us. So, but Kev wrestled with the Outrunners versus Willie Mack and the Infantry, and then I wrestled Josh Woods. I think part of that was, I think that they knew my background, so people thought Woods and I'd be a good matchup, so that's why they did it. But like that was the week before the Open Challenger started, and that was really like the only kind of time we were there. It's a match that if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll see, what it takes to get there. We've done everything we can to make it happen. I know we've had promoters inquire about making it happen. I know if it happens, it happens. I'm obviously, GCW's pulling some cool stuff off. I mean, they just got Andrade, so
yeah, for sure. I mean, it just felt like the stars had aligned. I was like, oh, here it is. This is the.
I mean, well, it's weird because the way it worked was like open challenge, lose time.
Over.
Like,
it was done. Yeah,
right.
I think they did what, three of them?
Maybe two or three. Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. The idea is always be ready for anything. So that's kind of our thought process. Is we're always going to be ready, and we'll see. If anything comes of it.
Yeah. Well, a team that you guys did get to wrestle already 3 times. We talked about them a little bit earlier, Los Macizos. You came into GCW, you beat those guys. They beat you guys in the rematch. And then, of course, you won the rubber match to win the titles at center stage, as we were talking about before. What does it mean not just to be the GCW champions? Because I know that, it was a title, like you said, that was the big elusive championship kind of in like the world of like the independent scene that you guys had in
Randy Stone.
Yes, exactly. But not only that you won it, but you won them from Los Macizos, who, and for my money, are the most decorated, the former 4-time GCW tag champs. Like, so not only did y'all win, you beat probably the best tag team in the company's history for the titles.
Yeah, I mean, Macizos are one of the most underrated teams out there. I think everybody just thinks that they're blood and guts guys, but they're just good wrestlers too. Those are guys that care a lot about wrestling, and I feel like our styles have meshed very well in the 3 matches we've had. Each one of them has been a little bit different. The first one was more of a straightforward affair. The second one was kind of more of like what they would call like a bullshitty affair with us doing the Chola stuff at the start of the match. And then the third match was just kind of like the brawl. So I think that there's so many different ways we could go with it. And I think that those guys are so versatile in terms of the ability to do normal matches and then death matches and all that stuff. And, I'm like a closet death match ghoul, if anybody knows me. So obviously, maybe if down the line one of those guys wants to do a singles of a death match, I'd be more than willing to, do that. So I mean, if you look at the way the GCW tag divisions run, GCW's been around since about 2015, I think, 2014 maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
So in time, there's really been no tag team that's like them. I mean, 4-time champs. I mean, they've beaten everybody there. They've beaten the Briscoes. They've beaten SGC, whichever iteration you want to go of them. Wolfpack, Black and White, whatever it is. Bussy, East West Express. They've beaten everybody. I mean, And then did Masizo? No, because East West Express lost or beat the Guns. So I mean, they've wrestled the Guns. They wrestled everybody. So I mean, for us to get this initial 3-match series out of the way with them is great. And I think obviously those guys aren't going to take lightly to losing. So I'm sure we're not done with them.
Well, like you said, I'd like to see a singles match with you in either Cyclope or Miedo Extremo, because both of those guys are like you guys, like you and Ku, where you're both they're really good singles wrestlers too. Like whenever they get these kind of random opportunities, every now and then they'll even be like the same. It's like it's you and Q. I see this happen sometimes. We're even like at the same tournaments with one another in singles tournaments, and you come across wrestling each other and stuff. So always I appreciate that. I'd love to see more between you guys as singles or tag team.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, now you're the champions, of course. There are a lot of babyface teams. There are just teams of, every team out there. Like, do you have anybody like in mind as far as like challengers, or is just like I someone comes to step up?
We'd like to wrestle East West Express. I know that obviously it's a little harder to pin Nick Wayne down these days than it would have been a year ago. How dare he turn 18 and be signed right away when he's 18? Fucking asshole.
Yeah. What a jerk.
Kind of anybody and everybody. I think that the GCW lexicon gives us the ability to kind of really anybody out there. Obviously, I think you look at, there's some teams out there, like I know Janela and Sawyer X seem to team a lot. I think us versus SGC, like Mance and Manders would be really good. They just had War Dogs in, and I would love to wrestle Gabe and Alex, like, badly. So realistically, whatever comes, we're really ready to take. So
when it looked like after you won the titles that you were offering Miss Isos, like, if you want these, like, you know where to find us. So
absolutely. I mean, those guys didn't need to give us, a title match. I mean, they technically beat us the last match we had. So, that's the way it works. We're dickheads, but, we're realistic dickheads. That's one of the beauties of us as a tag team. Actually, one match that I could see set up for us, and it's like an ultimate Joey Janela spring break type of match. There's 2 matches that I think they could set up for us that I would love. Okay. One is a little more, I guess, feasible than the other. One would be us versus Astronauts, Nomura and Abe.
Okay.
Mainly because we wrestled Abe last year, and I want to wrestle Nomura because I think that there's a lot of similarities between us. I also think that a lot of people say that Astronauts are one of the best tag teams in the world, and I just love to have that matchup. The other one that is like the most Joey Janela spring break booking of all time would be if, when he comes back, would be us versus Red Dragon.
Man. Yes.
I think it's very possible to make happen, as long as, Kyle's okay. Obviously he's coming back from the neck surgery, but if he comes back, I think like when like you have those old Giancarlo vignettes, you could do almost like one of those with like a Double Dragon arcade game where it's like us beating people up, and then it's like who will step up to fight the bosses, and then out of nowhere it's like Kyle and Bobby. So
oh my god, that's awesome. Pirates of both y'all chasing the dragons on people and stuff, and the influences there. Oh man, dude. I mean that's a lot of people have talked about you and FTR and stuff. Like my ultimate match for you guys would be Kyle and Bobby personally.
And we powdered a lot of everything we did off Kyle and Bobby, and until we found kind of like, we used to just do the regular chasing the dragon, but then we found our way to like make it ours. So
yeah,
it's a big thing. And that's like, I'm hoping, I've seen Kyle's recovery videos, and Kyle was one guy that I had pushed for John to really book before he got signed by the WWE. And it was just, the timing just didn't work out because it was all so fast from the ROH thing to then kind of going dark to then ending up right in NXT. So I know we tried to do it, and I remember talking to Britt, and I said, hey, you tell Kyle, Gary, can you tell Adam to tell Kyle, so it just never worked out. But I think we're in a way where if Kyle wants to take, a random, indie booking, if his body allows it, that is a place where they could set up and it'd be sick.
I want to throw one team at you that Kevin mentioned to us on a different show. Grizzled Young Veterans.
Oh yeah. We are in the DPW verse. Our good friends that we just called up the day that their contracts ended to wrestle the work. To us, GYV represent everything that is great about tag team wrestling. Not going to say they were misused in the WWE, but when they went from being super awesome, serious tag wrestlers to no color contact guys, it kind of stole what they were great at. So we talked with them a lot at DPW Live, DPW Live 3, and I know that that's a match that, you know, the DPW boys we want, so we're hoping it comes down the line here soon.
You do have a dream match coming up next weekend against Kenta. Yeah. Oh, you know what can fans? I would go to this, but it's WrestleCade weekend, and I'm going to North Carolina for WrestleCade. Otherwise, I would 100% be at the AIW show.
We actually got hit up to do the GCW WrestleCade show, and I told Brett, I said I got a big one. I can't really do that one.
Yeah,
man. So John will usually consult me before he books a name or anybody or stuff. He said I hit Rocky up. He said he offered Kenta, and I said, oh. I said, really? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, I said, I don't think Kenta's probably ever been in this area, nor will he probably ever come back to this area. I was like, so you should take it. And then it was kind of like the proponent of, well, who should get him? And, you know, we had some ideas, and he, you know, some people were like, hey, do Tom Lawler versus Kenta. And John's theory is Tom Lawler versus Kenta could happen at any New Japan Wrestling show. It really could. I think Dorn had thought it happened on a New Japan Strong Show, and I think I did too. It hasn't, but the idea was, let's do, you know, kind of what makes AIW to be famous, and that's a match that you really can't get anywhere else. And, you know, obviously over the last 4 years, a lot of my style has become kind of like that New Japan, just the Japan kind of, as Thorne would say, the kick the shit out of you style. I'm gonna hit you really hard style. And Kenta really originated that as a junior heavyweight, and I, you know, watched a lot of Kenta, you know, coming up, and the idea of getting to wrestle that guy is an amazing idea. I mean, if you look behind me, you can see this Ring of Honor poster. If I can, my head's in the way.
Other way.
There you go.
The Ring of Honor poster, that's the Glory of Honor where Kenta debuted. And I bought that to put up in my house. And, you know, Kenta versus Danielson is like one of my favorite matches ever. And that ROH run he had is amazing. Like, there is some HDNet stuff that no one's seen of, like him versus Roddy and him versus Hero, that are just unreal. So my hope is to, you know, bring it out of him and get, you know, like those matches out of him. You know, I want him to come here. I want him to, you know, literally hit me as hard as he can. And, you know, I want to have that feeling. And I think I'm hoping that, you know, the fans, you know, give us the streamer treatment, and I'm just really excited for it. I'm very excited just for everything about it. There's not a lot of guys left for me in terms of the dream match list. So Kenta was one I probably thought I wouldn't ever get to check off. So I'm happy about that, you know, and I'm just really excited. That venue that we're running in is a great venue. It's big, open volleyball area, great lighting. So it should be awesome. I'm very excited about it.
Any thoughts on Chris Hero's return, just since you mentioned him?
Yeah. Well, my good friend Derek Dillinger, who's my co-trainer at the school, he is like a direct disciple now of Chris. They talk pretty regularly. We just had Chris in for a seminar about a month ago. I would say a little over a month ago. And I'm so excited for Chris to come back. I remember when he had first gotten released, Thorne had wanted to book him on multiple dates for AIW, and one of the matches was going to be Lee Moriarty, just because we knew how important that match was to kind of both of them. And then the other one he wanted to do, I think he wanted to do 3. I think he wanted to do that. I think he knew Derek wanted to wrestle him really bad, and then I had wanted to wrestle Chris really bad. So he kind of wanted to try to do all 3, but, you know, Chris at the time wanted to take that time off, and he's been out. Independent wrestling with Chris Hero is entirely better. Chris has obviously been doing a lot with AEW as a producer, but him coming back to the independents to help teach young wrestlers as well as work with them is going to be just paramount to, you know, kind of independent wrestling growing. What a lot of people don't understand, and this is another talk that Thorne and I have a lot, is when I came along in I started training in 2015, 2016, there was a real, like, large amount of independent wrestling veterans out there that young wrestlers could learn from, get in the ring with, and just be infinitely better for wrestling them. The WWE and definitely AEW coming along has really kind of robbed that talent base from the indies of talented independent wrestlers that wrestlers can learn from, because they're mostly all under contract now. There are exceptions to that rule. I think like Tony Deppen is one of those exceptions to the rule. If you wrestle Tony, you're probably going to get an amazing match out of him. He's going to teach you a lot. I think that like now that he's back out there, Hot Sauce Tracy Williams is another guy like that. I learned so much from working a lot of my early matches with Hot Sauce and getting to spend time with him in Evolve. So I think that Chris coming back gives one of those veterans back to the independents. That will be extremely important to the growth of young wrestlers, because a lot of the time now it seems like the independence is a lot of not necessarily blinding the blind. It's just a lot of young guys working with young guys, having the best match on the card, but not necessarily learning as much as they need to. And the hope here is that guys like Chris here, guys like myself and Kevin being out there, you know, and how now being 6-year plus veterans, being able to help, you know, young kids out. It's infinitely better. And I'm so happy that Chris is coming back. I'm so happy that, you know, he gets to wrestle Thatcher, who's awesome, who I wrestled earlier this year, who I loved him. One of my favorite humans in the world, not even wrestlers, just humans. So it's like I said, it's a big boot. It's a big swoon for independent wrestling. It's going to make everything and everybody better.
Dom, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Usually we ask the coolest thing in your room. I don't know if you've had any additions since we talked to you earlier this year, but if you have another cool thing in your room,
I could give you the really basic answer, which would be,
you got that GCW title next to you?
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go.
We always like when people show off the titles.
Yeah.
Always like it.
I had the thing on my shoulder last weekend. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's the biggest belt ever. Man, I just got something. I'm trying to remember what it was. Actually, I'll show you this pair of shoes that I've never worn.
Yes.
Let me get these. So, if anybody knows Ku and I, they know that we're like really big Disney guys. It's our goal to go to every Disney. We're 2 Disney short. The only 2 we haven't been to are Hong Kong and Shanghai. So if you know of any wrestling companies in either of those places that want to run wrestling shows, so we can go. But preferably, if you run that show, please book Shitty Hero Eardier as well, as he's a big Disney guy, and we just want to go with him to those parks.
There you go.
But yeah, so when I was in my depressive state a couple years ago, I was just spending money on anything and everything. So I had seen these Vans that had come out, and my favorite Disney movie is Toy Story. So I bought these Vans that are the Toy Story alien.
Those are lit.
And I've never worn them. They have they're glow in the dark. I have the tags on them, and I'm like a wear my shoes kind of guy. So these just sit in this really awesome 80s room box right here. And I just have them on display. So this is I didn't even think about these last time, but they are really cool shoes that I should probably wear, but don't wear.
Dude, it's funny because I'm not used to seeing you wearing shoes.
Well, that was the big thing too. Everybody used to always be like, you wearing shoes is such an adjustment. I had one fan that said that they didn't like me till I wore shoes. I had a couple fans that said that. And I said, I wrestled the same.
Yeah.
And I said, shoes were that much of a hang up for you, huh? And Effie, I've never seen a human being as happy as Effie is when I put shoes on. He said, you can't give away that content for free, Dom.
You would know. Yeah. He'll market the hell out of that. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Effie's the man. That's hilarious.
Thank you again for joining us, Dom. Let everybody know where they can find you out, what you got coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we have a pretty busy GCW schedule. When does this come out?
Tomorrow.
Oh, perfect. So Friday night, you can catch us in Seattle as we will be wrestling the Bollywood Boys for the Game Changer Wrestling Tag Team titles. Next week, Friday, I will be at AIW Hell on Earth Wrestling KENTA, as we discussed. A lot of great matches on that card. Derek Dillinger, Isaiah Brunner for the title is going to be a great match. Also, we booked a sick 4-way, which is Trey Lamar versus Josh Bishop versus Filthy Tom Waller versus Rocky Romero. So if you have a Fight TV subscription, check that show out, whether it be when it happens or right after. I believe, off. No, the next week is Black Label Pro Slamilton, where we're going to wrestle the Bang Bros. They are the team that dethroned us a year ago for the Black Label Pro Tag Title, so we're coming back for them. Then that Sunday, we will be on the GCW Brooklyn show. The week after that, we are in California for GCW and LA. I think finally, or no, so GCW in LA, next day DPW in Raleigh. Holy cow, God damn.
Man, you guys are busy all over the place. I love it.
I want to say the week after that we're off. Am I off? Yeah, I'm off because I might go to the Browns game that weekend. Matters on what day they play, and I have a company work dinner I have to do that week. And then Christmas, that is the week after that. And then New Year's Eve, that weekend is another crazy weekend. The 29th, I have AIW. We're going to run the Temple live. We have a very big meet and greet for that. I'm not going to spoil it because Thorne will kill me. I'll let him make the announcements from the AIW social. But December 29th, Cleveland Temple Live should be an awesome post-Christmas extravaganza. December 30th, we have ETU, Kevin and I. And then we are both that same night at the White Eagle. We're both going to be in the SPO Battle of the Tough Guys to, honor, SPO, who we lost earlier this year in the pit. So Kevin and I are both in that. And then on New Year's Eve, we will be at GCW again.
Gotcha. And just for the record, when I had mentioned say rest in peace to Sean earlier, that's what I thought you were mentioning was Sean Patrick O'Brien. So that's where I was confused. So
no, it's okay. Sean did a lot of our matches and always one of the most positive guys. Even if your match sucked the biggest pile of shit, he would go, "Oh man, that was awesome," and you'd be like, "No, that wasn't Sean." But great guy and very valuable part of independent wrestling that is now missed, and one of the biggest losses of the last year for sure.
And a fantastic karaoke. If you can ever find any clips of him singing, that guy had some pipes. So yeah, rest in peace.
I will see you at BLP Hamilton. I'm going to be there to punch Sean Ross Sapp in the face.
Are you going to be his corner? Are you going to be his corner man?
I don't want to like, it's not about me at all. I just want to like hit Sean just for all the years of like working for him,
So you have to, so you got to do the thing where Shaza puts his arms behind his back and lets the So you got that.
That's what I want to do. He wants, I got kids. I want the kids to like hit him as well. Like, why are you making my stepfather work so often? Like, just like some payback there. So that's what we need.
we need to, this is going to be booking in front of everybody if this winds up happening. But, Denise got Sean, at GCW.
Low blow.
You can get Sean at Slambleton. The next time Sean's around Atlanta, I'll get him at an event, and we can just make it a thing where all the Fightful people, we get our boss over and over. We keep them up on camera.
Let's do it.
That's what it's about, right? That's what it's about. Dom, thank you again for joining us. All the links below to support Dom and everything he's doing. Follow him to check out where it's going. The GoFundMe for Caden's grandfather is below as well, so everyone can donate to that. Dom, thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it. And guys, we'll be right back here on the Spotlight.